Yeah.
So with that, and on the conversation, I want to go here with it. From us not having these conversations with friends or talking about them or even socializing these things with mental health, having these conversations with our kids at a young age and making sure that they understand certain things. So when they get older and start going through these chambers, they know how to express and how to talk about these things here.
Well, I think I think the most important thing is open line of communication. You have to make sure
And encouraging it.
Yeah.
Not just having it, but encouraging it
and
so
having that so that they feel that they too, because kids can bottle stuff up too.
Yes,
right?
yes,
Because they feel
and
like
it
they
happens.
can't speak. It does happen.
And a lot of
So-
times, those adults were kids, and they learn to bottle it up and never come out of that shell. So when they're
Yeah.
adults, now it's hard to get them out of that shell because they've been doing
Yeah,
this.
I think
I've been locked in this box since I was 5
your
or,
kids
or
gotta
10.
be able to, your kids need to be able to feel like they can come and talk to you about anything.
Correct.
And that
Or-
help alleviate a lot of stress.
Or that they need, or they need to recognize when they need to talk to somebody, even if it's not you.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
need it. So on that, so I want to go somewhere in that same realm because we're gonna stick with kids. Excuse me. Education,
Okay.
right? What do you think needs to change? And I'm talking about the education system. And what are your top, I don't know, 5 to 10 things? Because I can give you. Would you want me to start it? I'll let you know mine.
I mean, what
With this-
specifically?
Okay, when I say this,
Because
we know.
A lot.
Okay,
I got a lot.
yeah. And Matt, for you guys that don't know,
got a
Steve
lot.
is heavily into the education system in Hartford, Connecticut, in our area that we grew up in our community. You've been on several different boards, and from high school to elementary to junior, across the spectrum.
I just try and put,
he's
just
everywhere.
try and-
So what I'm talking about is in this from this standpoint.
Yep.
We've known that the current curriculum, what you go to school for, what you learn, what they teach kids from elementary all the way to high school until they get out, somewhat the same standard, other than some of the things they pull back, like the arts and the music and the black, African studies and all that stuff there that they things that we definitely should still be part of the curriculum that's no longer there.
Yep.
I'm talking about this. And I've said this for years, you know what I mean? So once again, people that know me probably heard me say this for years. There's certain things like calculus, algebra, and stuff like that that you have to go through, you have to learn. Which it seems like, from my understanding and what I know, there's a small fraction of jobs that truly require those particular skill sets or that knowledge, right? But you're taught this. And when I say change, and I've heard other people say the same thing as well, that when are we going to get to a point where, and not just get to a point, when are we going to, as people, get to a point? So understand this, not system-wise, because I think we can't sit there and rely on the system. When are we going to get to the point where we understand that our kids need to be taught networking skills, budgeting, interpersonal skills, entrepreneurship, things of those natures at a young age, and encouraged and influenced? And if the school system is not teaching that in their curriculum, when are we going to own it and say, listen, when my kids are at home, this is the type of stuff that I'm doing? Now, I know individually we do that, but when are we as a people going to understand what our kids need to truly be educated to survive in the world? Because once you get into corporate America, 9 times out of 10, and in most of these fields, all that nonsense you were doing in school and stuff is out the door, and all the other things that we know to be true skill sets and things that you need to learn are the things that are on the table, and we're behind the gun because of a lack of exposure to these things, or being taught them, being even being given that type of, you know what I mean, push.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. Because when you asked the question, that question could have went 2 ways, right? And
No,
see
me, I asked a question. It probably
Yeah.
go like 10 different ways.
Yeah, I see the direction you're going. Have you ever thought about how we teach?
How the system, the school system teaches?
Yep. How it teaches.
In what respect?
Teaching hasn't changed in this country ever.
I can agree.
They
For the
teach
most part.
you. They teach you the same way you're taught, the same way your mother was taught, same
Correct.
way her mother was taught, same way
The game
her-
changed, but the teaching's the same. I agree.
we teach the same exact way. Everything in this world has changed,
Kind of like they say that people.
but we teach
I
the
ain't gonna
same
go
way.
there.
What are some of the things that I would change? First of all, I think that we have the capacity to learn more at a younger age.
Fully agree.
So
Studies show
I
little
don't.
kids are like a sponge. You can teach them 5 different languages, and they'll pick up on all 5.
Especially when they're young, right? I also think that in the age that we live in,
Mm-hmm.
we should be teaching our kids more about technology,
Oh, definitely.
not about necessarily how to use it, right? It shouldn't just be. I'll give you an example. COVID, for example,
Mhm.
right? COVID has everybody going home, right? Learning from home,
Correct.
right? Who does that inherently immediately hurt? Hurts minority communities. Why? Because they may not have internet. They may not have access to a laptop. May have never used a laptop before. Why? Because in the school systems, they don't really get to use the laptops. They get to go to computer class, and in a certain classroom, they get to do that. They don't even get textbooks anymore, right? They don't even give out that type of stuff anymore. So we're inherently at a disadvantage when we go home, because now our parents, who are not around to begin with, right, and are at work, it's now incumbent on me at home to figure out how to get online and do what I have to do. What about young kids whose parents still have a job, still working, but these kids are in elementary school? What do they know about necessarily? And you might assume that in this day and age, well, of course they do. No, they don't. I don't know how to log into my computer. I don't know how to search the web. I don't know how to do that. I know how to do it on my phone.
And I know how to do it on the video game.
Right. But I don't know how to do it on a computer. So when now you run out and you give out all these laptops to these kids, but yet you're wondering why we don't have 100% of the laptops we put out, why everybody isn't jumping online. Because from a technology standpoint, we're always behind. I'll give you an example of that.
Now, you saying behind, are you talking about from a community standpoint?
From a community standpoint.
Okay, all right.
I'll give you an example. How long were you still using cassette tapes before you started using CDs, but you already knew about CDs?
So, are you saying that from embracing the technology?
That too.
Or are you talking about from
that too?
Because I think it's a little bit different.
No,
because I think that example you gave. I'm just saying this. That example you gave, that was new technology, but you had a ton of old stuff. You know what I'm saying? You had it on the
you
old.
You also couldn't afford it. When CDs first came out, how much was a CD player versus what was still being? It wasn't that, there's a bunch of cassette players that are still in circulation. No. Every year they come out with something new. But when they come out with something new, it is expensive. So the CD players and the CDs are gonna go to the people who have them first, and who has the capacity to pay for it, and their kids are the ones that are gonna get used to using that technology first.
Okay, so you're talking about you weren't. I get the angle that you were talking about. You're talking about just from the physical ability to
right. So our kids
consume that technology.
Our kids might have laptops at home, but. And grew up being able to jump on a laptop and stuff like that. But how many of their friends or something to that effect actually have the same thing? And in some communities, the schools are providing those laptops and that technology for these kids to learn on. But in a lot of cases, they're not. They only get to use that stuff when they get to school. You know what I'm saying? How many kids are walking around with iPhones? A lot. How many aren't? A lot.
So, I don't know if we talked about this before.
Yeah.
And we might have. This might be something from episode 1.
So that's something that I would change. I know you're moving on, but that's something.
No, I wasn't really going to move on too much. I was just going to say, in regards to changing also, educating on health, exercising, things like that. Also, and I know we mentioned entrepreneur language, the importance of actually truthfully not just going to school to learn Spanish because I got to take Spanish up, but understanding, because when you said something in regards to really knowing technology and not just using it, but knowing it, it made me think about this. Knowing technology is also like knowing the world and the direction the world is going.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a deeper, let's say, conversation that we need to have with our kids so that they can prepare and make plans for the next thing that's actually rolling out what was, you know what I mean, on the horizon. So when you say that, it's like telling your kids back in the day, hey, I took French. That was dumb. Take Spanish. Why? This is the population. This is how things are going. If you notice the ATMs are in Spanish and English, this is why.
Mm-hmm.
Helps you with jobs in this and third here because this is the direction the world is going.
I think that
Eat healthier. Why? Because this is what's happening here with obesity, this and third here. Make sure you work out and get conditioned this way. Why? Because when you get older, you get this way because this is how the world moves.